Bilikis. You're welcome to my channel. How you doing? Today's tutorial will be on how to cut and sew this trendy kaftan or bubu. I don't know why bubu or kaftan is really trending right now, so you should be part of the trendy style. So I'm going to teach you how to make this style with yoke, and the yoke is usually made of tulle. Looking at what I have here, this is the tulle and this is the lace. This is just for the tutorial. Looking at it, the shade of the tulle is different from that of the lace, but it doesn't matter, who cares? As long as you, my fans, understand the style I'm about to make. So now, what are the essential measurements you need? You need the length of your gown, and guess what? You could even make it as a top. You can decide to make it as a gown or as a top. Trust me, it's going to be beautiful. You can line it, or, anyhow. So now, what are the essential measurements? You need to know the length of the gown or the top you want to make. Then you need the measurement from your center back right to where you want the sleeve to end. It could be midi or maxi. It totally depends on your preference. So having know that, you need your largest circumference. Maybe your bust or your hip. It depends on whether you're making it a top or a dress. So now let's go over to the work table. I folded the fabric into four, the normal way we fold for an A-line gown. And this is, I'm cutting both the front and the back together. So the first thing, you need to know the length of the dress. This is a long dress I'm making, and for the person it is 56. So I'm just going to make it 57. If you are going to trim off the lower part, you can add extra 1 or 2 inches to that again. Or if the selvage is a very beautiful selvage, you can leave it. So for this now, I'm just going to measure from the lower part upwards. So I'm going to measure 57. So I'm going to start from here, 57. So I'll be able to cut off the excess. So this is 57. Then I'll come here again. 57. Here. Then I'll make a straight line. That's that. Remember, I told you to take the measurement from the center back to where you want the sleeve to end. For her, it is 24. You can make yours shorter or longer. For her, it's quite long. That's what she wants. So what I will do now is to measure 24. Don't forget to add your seam allowance to whatever you are trying to cut out. So this is 24. I'll come here again. Measure 24. The last one, 24. So what I'll do now is to make this into a straight line, then trim it off. Can you see I've made it into a straight line? So this is the exact fabric I need. What I'll do now is to trim off this side. The exact fabric needed for this dress. So what do I do now is to insert the neck width and neck depth. For this, I want 2.5 for the width and the depth. It totally depends on what you want. There's going to be a slit at the back. So this is 2.5. Sorry, 2.5 should be here. Initially I made 3. That was a mistake. So 2.5 by 2.5. Can you see that? The reason why it's so small is because you know too, before you know it, it starts expanding after cutting it out. So now I have 2.5 by 2.5. The next thing now is to come down by 1.5 inches here. So this is 1.5. So I'm going to connect from this point to the edge of this neck width. So let me get the ruler. I will come down by 1.5 inches. Then I'll connect to the edge of this neckline. Can you see that? Now I'll have to trim this off before we go to the yoke part. Trimmed off. Now this is what I have. But before I even cut it at all, I want to insert the horizontal measurements. So you know where to sew when you want to do that before we come over to the yoke area. So now for her, from the nape of her neck to her under bust is 13. So I'll just make it 13.5 because I'm going to hem this upper part. So So this is 13 and a half. 13 and a half. Then to our hip, the waist is negligible because this is a kaftan, which is 22 and a half. So I'll make this line into a straight line. Have them in a straight line. This is under the bust and this is the hip line. So what I'll do now is to insert our bust measurements. Our bust measurement is 34 and I think half of that should be 8 and a half. Yes. So for his, I can just make it 9, but I'll just make it 8 and a half because she's quite petite. Then the next one. So now for the hip, our hip measurement is 36 and half of that is 9. For ease, I could just make that 9 and a half. So the waist is not necessary. Just connect. You see that? Then from there, I'll have to connect the lower part. So here, remember I said it's an A line down. Here I have 9 and a half. I'll just add 4 to it. 4 is okay. 4, so that's 9 and a half plus 4. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 13 and a half. Have to connect this. Once they should be so visible. So looking at it now, so I just have to sew from the underbust straight down like this, and you do that to the other side. I hope that is explanatory enough. Now let us focus on the yoke area, and trust me, it is very, very easy. So back to the yoke area now. So it depends on where you want the depth of the yoke to be. So it totally depends. So for her, I can just make it 5 inches. Then remember I was telling you you need your calf's height. The reason is this. So because we want it to, the tool to be like an half shoulder. So the tool will just cover the upper part. So now our shoulder measurement is 13. Half of that is 6 and a half. So 6 and a half is here. So the our calf's height is 3 and a quarter, which will be here. So what do I mean by the calf's height? That is the largest part of your bicep. Or better still, if you don't want to go through the stress of calculating it, just add 3 inches to 4 inches to half of your shoulder measurement. So this is half of our shoulder measurement, which is 6 and a half. The end, our calf's height, which is 3 and a quarter. If you don't want to calculate yours, just add approximately 3 to 4 to half of your shoulder measurement. So this is where it is now. Can you see that? So now for the depth of the dress, I can just make it 5 and a half. For the tool, which will be the yoke, can you see that? So now I'll now have to connect from this part down here. But when you want to connect this part, because you want it to straight after falling, you want it to be like straight on your shoulder circumference. So what I will just do is first just make this like straight. Can you see? I did not curve it. If you want to curve, it will go this way. But now just make it straight here. So for that, just make it straight here. I don't know why my chalk is breaking up. So can you see? This is sort of straight. Then from here now, curve it slightly. So what I'll do now is to cut this off. But note, you will need seam allowance to join these together. So now when you cut this off, we cannot add seam allowance to this lower part again. So when you want to cut this with a tool, you have to add extra 1 inch to it. Because by the time you take half an inch here, half an inch and join together, that is 1 inch. So when cutting, you add extra 1 inch to this yoke part. I will show you when we are about to cut that. So first I'm just going to cut this off. It's quite bulky. Now this is what I have. Let me just show you. So So can you see what it looks like? So when you want, after I am adding the yolk to it again, you just have to sew this down and this down. That is very easy to make. So looking at this, this is the upper part where will be on your shoulder area, like an off shoulder. Can you see that? So that is how it looks. I'll just set this apart and continue with the yolk. So you can decide if you want the back to be higher. You can just make that maybe 1 inch is quite okay for that. If you want it to be high for the back, or better still, you can use the same neckline for both the front and the back. So now I'm just going to cut that. But that is if you are using the same neckline for both. But for instance, I could still change it. You want the back to be higher, just measure 1 or 1.5. So this is 1.5. So as I was saying now, if you want to use the same neck width and neck depth for both the front and the back, I will just have to cut it together. But if you want the back to be higher than the front, for instance down, this is 1.5. So 1.5 is here. So I'll just have to connect it to this. That's if you want a different neckline. That's why I'm taking my time. So first you have to cut the shorter one together. Can you see that? So one will be for the back, so this will be for the back. Then for the front again, you have to fold it back and then finish it up. So looking at it, this will be for the front. Can you see that? So this is the yoke, and don't forget to add extra 1 inch to this. So that's a side. So this will now be for the back. So looking at it, the back is higher. But after cutting the tool, we'll have to slit this because it has to pass through your head. But when we get there, we will continue. So now let me get the tool so we can continue. So now I just cut out little from this tool. Can you see that? So now this is for the front, yes, and this is for the back. So for this, I'm going to cut out 2 each. 2 for the back, 2 for the front. So now first I'll fold. So now I've folded this into 2. So that's for 1 piece. I'll now have to fold it over like this. Can you see that? So I will be able to have 2 or 1. You see that? Make sure the folded parts are aligned. So first let me cut out the front. Remember what I said, that you have to add extra 1 inch to the lower part because of the seam allowance. You can just pin it down. So 1 inch will be around. I'm just eyeballing it. You can measure yours. So that's the extra 1 inch. Now this is for the front. So looking at it now, I have 2. Let me see it. So this is for the front. I just hope this toe is visible for the front. So that's 1, that's 2. We are going to have to double it to have a very neat finishing at the neck region. That is why we have to double it. So now this is for the front. So what I've done now, I'm just going to do that also to the back, to cut out 2 of these pieces. Now I've cut out the back panel too. I've added the 1 inch to it. So this is for the back, this is for the front. The back is going to have a slit here, but as we keep sewing, then we go on. So the next thing now, we have to attach the two panels together. Remember, it was 2 for 1 panel. So this is for the front. We have 2 of the tool. 1, 2. So the first thing I'll do now is this: take to my sewing machine and then take in quarter or half, depending on the seam allowance you want to take. Then I'll now have to sew it all through. Can you see that before I turn it? Then for the back too, this is the back. Okay, maybe I could just make the slits. Depends on the length you want. Make sure you get the midpoint. So definitely this is the midpoint. I'll just have to slit it. But if the neck width you used is wide enough to accommodate your head, you don't need to make this slit. So looking at the slit now, I'll now have to take to the sewing machine and then sew 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch all through this way, then go this way and back. I'll do that and show you. Can you see that? Also this, but what I did here, I already trimmed this off. So what I'm going to do now is to trim this also. You trim it in such a way that it's so close to the seam, but please do not cut through the seam. That could be very, very dangerous. Can you see that? What I'll now do is this: I'll now have to turn this. I've got a lot of requests on this, and I hope now you understand how to go about this tool, because I've got a lot of requests to make a video on how to sew the tool as a yoke to other fabrics. Can you see how it looks? So this looks slimmer and very nice. But when you are making yours, make sure you use a closer shade of thread to the tool you are using. But this is a tutorial. We need something obvious, because this, I just hope it shows well on the camera after checking it out. So that was why I had to use a darker shade of the thread. So with this you can see it, but make sure when you are doing yours, use a closer shade to the tool. So I'll just use a lukewarm iron to just press it up. Then I'll have to turn this too. Be careful so that you don't tear it up. So I'm going to do the same thing to this. I'll just press it and show you. Now you can see what I have. So nice. So assuming the thread I use is the same shade with this thread would not show at all. Can you see what I was talking about? That when you are making yours, make sure you use the same shade of this too for the thread. I'm talking about the thread now, but for this you can see so obvious. But looking at it, just assume it's the same shade. You won't even notice at all, and you'll be wondering where was the joining and all that. So after even done this now, what I will do now is to take one piece of this and then join the yoke to it. Let me see, this is one. Just determine the front and the right side and the wrong side, I mean. Can you see this? I'll now have to sew this up. Can you see that? So since I've added the 1 inch for the seam allowance, everything will be perfect. So looking at this, you can see everything is quite okay. So now this is the wrong side. I'll have to sew it up like this. You see that all through before I now top stitch towards the main material. But if you are making this for yourself and it's so transparent, if you have an inner to wear in it, fine, but you can attach a lining to it. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to sew it up. So let me attach this to the main fabric, then you see how it looks. That's it. Now have attached the yoke to the main fabric. You can see so beautiful. So what you are going to do now is this: make sure you finish this raw edges with your overlocking machine. After doing that, then you now have to top stitch it towards the main fabric. Can you see that? Which was what I did here. I'll show you. Can you see what I did? So please finish yours with an overlocking machine. You don't want to wear a dress that has all the raw edges all over the place. So looking at it now, I just have to press it towards the main fabric. So make sure you do yours neatly. So this is where you have the button or hook or whatever you want to add to that. Can you see? So on the right side is going to be like this. Can you see? It's neater and more beautiful. Can you see that? So I'm going to top stitch this the same way and then sew the front and back together at the shoulder area. So now this is the front, the right side, and this is the right side of the back. So they are going to be facing each other, right sides facing each other. So now you have to meet the same place. We cut it so well, so that means everything is okay. So now I'm going to take half an inch or quarter inch off from the neck region downward. Can you see that? Just moving over this. So can you see that? So I'm just going to sew this straight to the neckline. I'm going to do the same thing to these other parts. Can you see that? After doing that, then we can sew from the underbust straight down. So let me do this and show you. Now looking at it, can you see that I've attached it by the shoulder from the neckline downward. So this is what it looks like. Can you see that? So the next step now is to just finish this raw edge. After doing that, the lower part, then I'll have to sew. Just make sure you measure from this center point here, whatever you have here, measure it here. Also measure it here, then downwards. So I'm now going to sew this all down. Then I'll show you the final look of it. Then now for the jabot in front, because the style has a jabot in front here. So what I did was I cut out tulle of 60 inches in two places. So this is one, this is two. 60 inches by 4 inches. So what I will do now is this. I don't know if it's visible. So what I will do now, this is by 4 inches and then 60 inches long. So what I will do is to fold it this way. Can you see that? Then start sewing the edge. Then sew it all down. I'll do that for this first one, just the same way you sew a belt. I'll do that for this one and also this. Then I'll join it before we had it in front. It's going to be very beautiful. As you can see, it's so beautiful. Can you see that? So now, when I was talking about this side, the mannequin's shoulder is wider than that of the lady I made this dress for. Her shoulder is smaller. So for her, this yoke hangs somewhere around here. So it's kind of straight with this. So it's straight. Like this is curvy if you want it that way. But hers is somewhere around here. So it's like straight all through like this. So now, so that was what I was talking about in case you want that style. But if you want it to be curved like this, all well and good. So it won't drop as much as it would be for her. So having done that now, looking at the neck region, you can see it's like it's invisible. You can't even see the thread in which we used to sew. Mine is still showing because I use a lighter shade or the color of the tool. But if you use a closer shade, you won't even see it at all. So it will be like invisible and you'll be like, oh, this is beautiful. So now for the jabot, what I did was that, remember I told you to make a length of 60. So now I have to join it together here, so I have 120. You can make yours longer because the longer, the fuller. So what do we do? First, you just have to tag this down, the middle. Can you see that? With your sewing machine. But right now, I'm just going to pin it this way. Can you see what I have? Then you can just tie a bow, like 3 bows. But if you don't want that, you just want to tack it down and just make sure you determine the desired length. So let's just say, like for instance, this length is okay. Just fold it up. See that? Fold it up that way. Again, the same length. You can make it longer if you want. Can you see that? Then I'll have to fold again. Let me just pin that down. So you just all tack it down with your sewing machine. Can you see that? That's for just one part. I still have this long strip. I will have to do the same thing with the same length. Can you see that? Then again I'll have to fold. And I think the last one. So looking at it, can you see? It's so beautiful. So if you want it fuller than this, that means you have to make it longer. So I'll just have to pin this down too. But you should use your sewing machine to do all this. So can you see that? Isn't it beautiful? And you see it is very easy to make. So just try to make yours and share with us on our Facebook group, Sewing Innovations. Follow me on Instagram, Bilikis Signatures. And in case you are interested in our monthly online classes, the beginners class, intermediate class, advanced model 1, advanced model 2, just contact us through the contact number we'll put in the description box and also in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends about this channel. Love you guys. Bye.